It's just in the context of the military-industrial complex that was mentioned already. There's a huge homeless and housing crisis in the United States. There's a huge healthcare crisis with the Medicaid system being smashed. And we saw most recently the attack in the awful tragedy in East Palestine. And what was the priority for the US government, the neocon government led by Victoria Nuland, the deep state in the US, Nuland, Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken? Their priority is to keep fueling this war instead of looking after the needs of the people of the US. Hear, hear. And just in the context of NATO, I'll just say a few brief things because I know there's been a number of speakers today. But just in the context of NATO, yesterday was the 24th anniversary of the illegal attack on Yugoslavia that decimated Yugoslavia, where they used depleted uranium also in Yugoslavia. Over 15 tons were dropped, where Italian soldiers serving on NATO duty died of cancer. Many more people died of cancer because of this depleted uranium that the UK government, Rishi Sunak and Ben Wallace, are sending off to Ukraine. Shame on them! Shame. And the bigger context is in terms of the move towards Ukraine. 2008, George Bush said it. They were pushing to get Ukraine and Georgia into NATO. This was always the agenda. Pushing forward, more expansion, more military-industrial complex, more regime change, and more resources to plunder and steal. This is what their agenda is. They're doing it in Syria. They're stealing Syrian oil day by day while people are suffering there with famine, with the impact of EU and US imposed sanctions. People are dying every day because of these sanctions. And yet they're still stealing the oil, stealing the resources. And what did they leave? What did they leave behind? An absolutely devastated state. They've done the same. They've done exactly the same in Libya. Libya, thousands of people are dying in the Mediterranean trying to escape a failed state of Libya that Obama ordered the murder of Gaddafi to push through a regime change in Libya as well. And what was left behind? A failed state where women are sent to slavery, to be raped, to be incarcerated, and then they're trying to come across the Mediterranean and dying in that Mediterranean, controlled by Frontex, an absolutely horrific force in the Mediterranean, and stopping people escaping persecution in that country. So it's all about money, it's all about power, and it's all about getting the resources to benefit a unipolar world. And what's Ireland's response? Ireland's response is to go with a begging bowl of shamrock to the White House. Leo Varadkar should have stood up for neutrality and asked Joe Biden, they should have said to Joe Biden, who blew up the Nord Stream, Joe? Who blew up the Nord Stream? Who was involved in that? Was there an answer? No, Leo decided to say, we'll roll out the red carpet for Joe Biden when he comes to Ireland. Well, I for one will not be welcoming Joe Biden to Ireland, and I won't be rolling out the red carpet for Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a war criminal, a warmonger. He's involved in the regime of Obama that led to so many drone attacks in Afghanistan that left that as a completely failed state. And who's it benefiting? It's benefiting these warmongers. And this Irish response is abysmal. It's the people like Wolfe Tone over 2 centuries ago stood up on the principle of our independence and our neutrality. And now today we have Leo Varadkar bowing down to his masters in the WEF, bowing down to Ursula von der Leyen, and bowing the knee to Joe Biden, the warmonger. We need people to stand up for our sovereignty. These people have betrayed the Irish people, have betrayed our basic requirement of standing up for peaceful resolution of any international disputes. That's what Ireland should always stand for. We should be proud to be a neutral country, but we've got our neutrality attacked by these warmongers and attacked on the promise by Leo Varadkar, Simon Coveney and Micheál Martin. Micheál Martin's plan now is to bring up a citizens' assembly on neutrality. It's to try and say we're a grown-up nation and maybe we should move towards NATO. Maybe this is a natural progression because we need to protect ourselves. Absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. What the agenda is to drive us into this military-industrial complex, to bow down to their technocratic leaders in the European Commission, and not to serve the interests of the ordinary Irish people. So we need to come together as ordinary people It's shameful that a lot of the political establishment in Dáil Éireann don't represent the interests of the vast majority of people, in my view, because people, they've been sold a pup constantly. People say, vote for change, and what is change? Change is to keep the same people at the top of society, to keep the same warmongering machine going, and to keep the same inhumane policies happening in Ireland, with our housing, homeless crisis, with our healthcare crisis, with our education crisis. They don't serve the needs of ordinary people. So we need to look for what serves the needs of ordinary people. All of us, we're only going to change things from below, coming together to force that change and stand up for anti-war, stand up for peace, and stand up for the needs of ordinary working class people here in Ireland, in Russia, in the United States, and in Ukraine. Next up we have an ex-foreign editor of the Irish Press, much vaunted newspaper, and a great commentator on the current events in Ukraine. He's on M Compass Media every week, so people can tune into John Moran's musings and observations on what's going on. So big round of applause for John Moran, please. Thanks very much, John. Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's great to see us all here today, and I'll ask you to do one thing, to have a look around and remember this meeting, because in the future there are going to be huge meetings. Things are changing. I'll try and give you a bit of good news first. Like, we saw all that business in the Credit Suisse Bank last week, but what they didn't do was give us a reason for it. It was vaguely linked to the difficulties in Californian banks, but it wasn't that at all. What it was, in fact, was Chinese investors decided they would pull their money out because Credit Suisse had frozen 19 billion of Russian funds. Now, there's nothing that the West will listen to more than financial power. So bear that in mind, have that in the back of your head when you feel down about that. And it's changing, and it's changing in the direction of those of us who want a world where war isn't the first option, it's the last option. And if I could say one thing about the government here, I am disgusted as a neutral Irishman that the government here, Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin, are saying peace, but not now. They don't want peace now. If you talk about peace now, you're an enemy, you know. The only enemies we're an enemy of war. That's what we're an enemy of. And I'd like to say to Leo and to Micheál, when they hold that position every night, 1,000 young men and boys are dying in Donbass. Every night, every morning, 1,000 policemen are going around knocking on 1,000 doors for mothers and fathers to get that off on news, and brothers and sisters and husbands and the rest of it. Every day they delay, 1,000 more knocks on the doors. We want to stop those knocks on the doors. I would also say that I do get an impression from the Americans, from checking American media. I spend my day looking at the media. It was my job and it's still my job, but at least now I can put it to some good use, you know? I would dread to be in a newspaper now, working for mainstream media, having to go along like nice little houseboys with whatever they come up with. Whatever pro-war line they come up with, we would have to say, well, okay, that's the line. I want to keep a job. You know, careerism is killing it. But to finish up, I'll just say once again, it's great to be among all you good people. People who have good hearts. And we'll meet again, and there'll be a lot more of us, I hope, next time. Thank you very much for coming.
Next up we have another great writer, self-published author a number of times, and a great peace activist, very principled, and has come to and supported the Stop the War campaign since its inception about 7 or 8 months ago here in Ireland. Pat Keogh as well. Pat would like to come up and say a few words.
First, we are told that we're living in the age of freedom of information, the age of advanced civilization and enlightenment, where inclusivity and respect for each other is paramount. Yet we hear in our mainstream media channels, particularly in CNN News, reports of Ukrainian killing 5 Russian soldiers to every 2 Ukrainians killed by the Russians. They make boastful claims and glorify the killing of fellow humans. This is done in the interest of power-hungry, wealthy ammunition controllers, where civilians and frontline soldiers are just the pawns. The weapons industry giants test their weapons and accumulate wealth while the poor innocent people of Ukraine suffer and many die. Many Ukrainians speak the Russian language and respect Russian culture. They have no animosity towards Russia. They want to live in peace, as do many Ukrainians who support the Western culture. Those suffering most are the poor innocent civilians. But does NATO or the USA care? They see them as just casualties of war. NATO and the US are pouring fuel on the flames in Ukraine instead of trying to extinguish the fire. They are war hungry, and seeking peace is not in their agenda. A settlement would halt the development of sophisticated weaponry.
And from the Truth and Neutrality Alliance, it's one of the co-founders, Bill O'Brien. So put your hands together, please, for Bill.
The Bolsheviks got rid of all of those estates and they amalgamated them into Ukraine, and that's just how Ukraine came about. It's all right for us in Ireland. We can quite easily identify our national territory only because we are surrounded by water and there can be no contradictions, and our borders can never change. Where in my lifetime, and when I was at school, I was just looking at the map that we had on our wall there the other day. There used to be a country called Czechoslovakia, not there anymore. There was a country called the Democratic Republic of Germany, that's not there anymore. There was a country called Yugoslavia, that's not there anymore. So land borders in Europe have been changing all the time. At the end of this war, you will probably find that Poland will claim back some of its territory. Russia will claim back some of its territory, and you'll be left with a middle, which will be Ukraine. That won't, it'll be landlocked, and they won't have a port. The port of Odessa last week was desecrated by fascists. What the fascists done last week, they went around all of the cafes in Odessa, and they rounded up anyone from 50 and upwards, claiming that they were of military age, put them in the back of vans and sent them off to the front to be slaughtered. What they're really doing is that was an act of genocide against Russian speakers, because Odessa is a Russian-speaking city. And now, if you want to do any official business in Odessa, you have to do it in the Ukrainian language. The reason I'm speaking English to you, and the reason why we're speaking English in this city, is because the British done the very same thing with the Irish language. They made it an unofficial language. So for to even get educated, you had to do it in the English language. And that is what they're trying to do with the Russian language in Ukraine.
So we need to look for what serves the needs of ordinary people. All of us, we're only going to change things from below, coming together to force that change and stand up for anti-war, stand up for peace, and stand up for the needs of ordinary working class people here in Ireland, in Russia, in the United States, and in Ukraine. Yeah.